Welcome, welcome. We have the 10th episode of the Wyrd Way coming, and I really felt this was perfect because I'm coming in on a solo cast here today, and that is deeply exciting for myself because a big part of this is that I want to have conversation with incredible people who are really choosing their own path, and I also want to bring my own message into this space, and I feel it weaves through the different stories that are told here on the Wyrd Way, and many of the people that I've had on are beautifully aligned with what I want to see more of in this world and hold that beautiful pillar and bring through something that I feel is very unique to themselves. Yet today I feel it's really, really powerful to drop in by myself for this episode. And why that is because I've been going through my own journey as of late, and a big part of this podcast is I want to share real. I want to be raw. I want to be vulnerable and authentic, and to let you in a little bit into my life, because for me, when I've looked at people on the screen of Instagram, of podcasts, I can be like, oh, they have it all figured out. They know what they're doing. And some of them, yes, they know what they're doing. And we still go through it. And we still figure out how to do the next thing. And we face our own challenges. And why I'm sharing this is I want this podcast to be like, oh, I can connect to this man who calls himself Dean, who expresses himself in this way. And there's no need for that pedestal. And if you do, that's on you. I do not want to be there. And to let you see my humanness, to let you see my realness, rawness, because I'm stepping into what I would call an identity shift. And I'm going to speak of this entire podcast and going through this transformation. And this is going to be relevant for anyone who is going through a transition or who's been through a transition, because it requires a letting go of who we were and a stepping into more of who we are. And that's how I like to view this, because we can often think, oh, I'm becoming someone that's not me. No, that is not the purpose of this. Like, if we're going for transformation, we want to become more of who we are. And that is important, because for a long time, I tried to destroy myself. I was like, I don't like Dean. I want to get rid of him. I need him to die. I need him to go away. And a lot of my seeking when I was young came from this place. I'd be seeking these big egoic deaths, whether that was through psychedelics, transformational retreats, workshops, whatever it was. But I wanted to go to the depths, and I wanted to break myself down, you see. And in that, it was coming from a subtle layer of I didn't like who I was. And this is never going to serve us if we're looking to become more of ourselves, because we think we need to have to be someone else, and this will never do. So what the invitation for myself was, and for you, is to actually be like, oh, I don't need to change, and I can also desire to change from a place of love, not from a place of hate. And that's one of the biggest learnings I've had on this journey is, oh, I don't have to hate myself. I don't have to judge myself. I don't have to condemn myself for being who I am. And I can still desire to change and move forward in this world. And that's where I am right now in my own journey, because I'm going on my own identity shift and transformation in an intentional way. And I'm speaking to this a lot in my work, in my containers, in my different things. If you haven't yet joined my email list, check that out. You can find it on Instagram. Go to the link tree and just join that. You'll get to hear a lot more of my own journey as well, and where I'm at. And a reason why I'm speaking to this is because I believe this is what happens for most people. If you're familiar with the framework of the hero's journey, this is the hero's journey. This is the quantum shift. It is a timeline shift. It's a quantum leap, whatever you want to call it. it is essentially what you're saying is it is an identity shift. And this is why I'm sharing this right now, because when we go through an identity shift, what we're saying is we change the internal reality of who we are. And through that internal change, we change the external behaviors, which then change our results in this world. And this is important because you're never going to get the results you want if you're not getting them already from the same place you're acting from. You will need to change. And this is what any transformational work should be about. It's not always what is. Sometimes it is trapped in the ego of this is who you need to be, rather than peeling back the layers and coming back to, what is the embodiment of the essence and the version of you that would be capable of doing this. There's a big difference there. If you're aware, you're aware. So what does it mean to shift your identity, and how do we work with that? So I'm going to speak to this on many, many layers, and this is all going to come out free flow. So it's probably going to go through a few tangents and a few rabbit holes, and bear with me. So why I work with this, if you're familiar with Hermetic principle, there's a saying, so within, so without. And there's a quote that I really like to speak to that goes alongside of this. There was a man who wanted to change the world, and realizing he couldn't change the world, he tried to change his community. Realizing he couldn't change his community, he tried to change his family. And realizing he couldn't change his family, he decided to change himself. And upon realizing he could change himself, he realized that in changing himself, he changed his family. And in changing his family, he changed his community. And in changing his community, he changed the world. And this, to me, is the essence of this. Because yes, we can do the external things. We can get up and meditate every morning, but if we don't become a meditator, we may just be doing it for the spiritual ego to say, I'm a meditator, not to dive into ourselves and know who we are on that level. And this is big, because most people get caught in the external results of, why am I not achieving what I want to achieve? Why am I having the same levels of scarcity? Why am I having the same problems in relationship? Why am I having the same problems in my work? And the core of that is it's involved in your identity. This is who you are. And you've been conditioned and to believe that this is who you are through the indoctrination that occurs throughout your life. And the work I do, and the work that I'm speaking to here, is the conscious peeling back of the layers and the conditions that we have put upon ourselves. And this could come from trauma, it could come from just family systems, whatever it was. But you got put in that box because of where you grew up, who you grew up with, and the culture and the society that you grew up in as well. So when you become aware of this, you realize that so much of yourself is a product of your environment. And I could speak to this in a number of ways, because I don't believe the nature versus nurture argument is complete. And I believe that, yes, the nature and the nurture both provided who you are, and one called in the other, because your soul also wanted that experience. So it could have that experience to grow in a specific way, and then for you to learn that there is another way, and then to offer that gift back to humanity and the collective, to heal that peace within the collective, so we can go on a evolutionary shift within the human consciousness. That is also an aspect of this, which I feel like that may be another podcast, which I need some time to drop into. And so when you realize that the same pattern is playing out again and again, whether that be in any of the things I just spoke to, relationship, work, money, how you relate to yourself, you realize that's an identity of who you've been in this world and who you've been taught to. And generally this isn't who you really are. And when you begin to recognize these patterns, And you can just do that by now looking at your life and asking, oh, what areas of my life am I noticing the same things occur again and again? This is a pattern. This is an identity. And you need to consider this, because the only way to bring change to it is to bring conscious awareness to this part of yourself, so that you can then create a shift within yourself and consider, okay, what do I need to do now? So once you bring that into awareness and maybe you want to change it, first you have to become truly aware of what the specific identity that you're holding is. So for me, some of the identities that I've held in the past, I've held the good boy and the nice guy. And this stemmed from childhood. And a big part of this was I wanted to ensure that I would get the love from my mother specifically, but also my family. So I was afraid to be a burden. I was afraid to be a problem. And what that meant is I would forego my own needs so that I would hope that I could get the love. If I just wasn't a problem, other people would love me because I wasn't a burden. So then they would love me and I would get the love that I truly desired from myself, but I didn't know that at this time. And what happened is I continued that pattern over and over again within my life. I would date women who I would find controlling, or I was a nice guy around. I would have teachers, bosses, and different people in my life that there was the same relationship with, especially someone who could fill the mother role. And this was reflected in bosses, in teachers, in relationships, where I would go into this and have this relationship reform and be recreated. And this was because it was part of my identity. I identified as someone who was controlled by their mother. And this wasn't to say my mother actually controlled me, but this was to say that this was a part of my identity growing up, because that's how I thought I needed to be to get love. And this isn't to say that this is what was true, but this was what my identity told me. And so when I began to unpack that, I realized, no, that wasn't actually who I needed to be to get the love I wanted. And through recognizing that, healing, forgiven myself, forgiven my mother, and being with the pain of being that nice guy, being the good boy, I was actually able to come to a point where that pattern changed, and no longer was that a part of my identity. So now there is no longer that same need or identity around being the good guy around women, and it still comes in at times. This isn't to say I'm perfect and I've completely healed everything. But now I recognize the pattern. I recognize where the universe is bringing it back in to say, hey, are you sure you're not this guy? Are you sure you're not this nice guy again? Because then I get to say, hey, no, I'm actually not. I'm different now. I'm choosing a new path. And this is what happens when we're shifting identity. This is what happens when we're creating change. What happens is the universe will test us and ask, hey, are you sure you aren't that same person that you were? And it may do this by putting things in your way, having situations arise, which in the past you would have chose a certain thing. And the question is, can you choose a different way now? Are you choosing a different way now? Are you learning the lessons? Are you embodying the lessons? Are you actually stepping into your identity, the new identity that goes against the old one? And this is a journey. You're not going to get it right all the time, but every time you do get it right, your identity shifts a little bit. And the more and more you get to hold that new identity, that this is no longer you, the greater and greater that shift is. And eventually no longer do you need to be tested in that, because now you just are this new person. So this is why we are talking about identity here, because it is the fundamental building blocks of human nature ever since we had been conditioned and put into the box of who we think we need to be. And the important point of this is to bring conscious awareness to who you are being and how you are being. Because if you think you have to be that version who you are stuck. But if you know you are choosing to be that person, then you have power, because this gives you choice. So right now in your life, consider the areas where you feel stuck, where you feel nothing's changing, where there's nothing working. What that means is you're stuck in an identity, and the reason you're frustrated is because your identity actually wants to shift, and there's a part of you that's holding on to that old identity, and it's like, hey, I want something else, I want something new, but you haven't allowed it yet. You haven't allowed yourself to step into that next iteration of yourself. So you will need to go through that journey of letting go of who you have been. And this may look like grieving. This may look like anger release. This may look like just pattern rewiring through your unconscious. There are many, many ways to do this. Or it may just be choosing every day to be that new identity of yourself. So that was a little tangent, and it was important to go down because right now, I told you, this is the journey I'm currently on. So for the last 4 years, I have been a coach. I have been someone who's been in the coaching industry, and that has been both my journey to claim that identity, because at the start of them 4 years ago, I was not a coach. I was like, oh, I think I want to coach, but I didn't actually believe I was a coach even when I started coaching people at that time. I hadn't claimed that identity yet, but I was stepping into it. So what I did was work on the internal beliefs around who I was and my own worthiness around this role, and continued to step into it and allow myself to own that. And over time, I began to develop the behaviors of a coach, knowing how to run a business, knowing how to coach people, knowing how to help people heal and facilitate their own growth, and beginning to build relationships so other people could come to me, creating content so I could build my authority as a coach and all of this. I became basically the archetype of a coach, and I embodied that over them 4 years. And now I find myself quite naturally in that role. It feels quite easeful when I coach. At the start, I felt stressed. I always worried if I was good enough. Am I able to do this? Even when people were paying me, even when I was doing it. And it took time. And this is the thing with an identity shift. We just want it to be now, and it can happen. We can just choose it. And especially on the start, like, it can take time. And as I'm changing and shifting my identity now, I can feel it's more easeful. I know the procedure. I've done it before. I've done it before I went into becoming a coach as well, because I changed my identity from the engineer to the spiritual hippie. Yes, that was my journey, and it got to me where I am, and it allowed me to become this version of myself. And since I've done it a few times, there's less attachment to the old identity, because I'm aware of the process, and a part of me has been willing to surrender on a deeper level, and this is really helpful. And so depending where you are on your journey and what identity you're shifting into, it may be more easeful or harder depending on your history and your ability to surrender the old parts of you. And for me, the identity shift is more subtle. And I believe that as we go on our journeys, the identity shifts will often be a refinement of who we've been and follow a similar thread. And so to clarify where I'm moving, I'm stepping more into the role of creator. And for me, what a creator is someone who produces content, they share their message, they teach, they allow other people to see them. And I plan to be producing a lot more content. I've started a YouTube channel by the time this has got out there. I've started a Facebook community. If you haven't become a part of that, check my link tree. By the time this goes out, it will be live, and I'll be sharing about how to more consciously create and what that means. It's called Conscious Creators. You can find that there. And this means that I'm allowing myself to be seen more. It means I'm letting go the parts of me that were still scared to share and be like, oh, like, who would watch me? Why would people watch me on YouTube? Why, like, there was all these limited beliefs. And and all these things of like, oh, are you sure? Are you sure? Who are you? Are you a coach? Are you a creator? All these like dichotomies within myself that said, hey, are you sure about this? And I just said, hey, this is what I want to do. This is where the aliveness is leading me. And so in this new identity shift, the identity of a creator transcends that of me being a coach, because I am still going to be a coach. And if you want to know what that looks like, and if you want to work with me, you can just reach out, send me a message, and we can connect, and I can share with you what that looks like. But my role as a creator transcends it, because it's going to employ the coach. It's like having a hierarchical system where my creator sits above my coach, because for me, creating is a more important aspect of my identity. That is what I want to do in this world. I want to create experiences for people. I want to help people create their lives that they truly want. I want to help people create what they want in this world. I want to create content that inspires and adds value to people's lives, like this conversation here. I want to create art. And these are new values of mine because I'm going through an identity shift. Before, it was less about creation because there was aspects that were attached to my old identity that wasn't willing to die when I became a coach. Now I've been willing to let go a lot more so I can transcend this. And so for me, when I'm considering, how am I stepping into the identity of a creator? Because clearly, if you're listening, that is different to me being a coach. There's new beliefs I need to believe around myself to make me a valued creator and be able to share my message with people around me and be willing to share my message as well. So I ask myself, who do I need to be a creator? What do I need to believe around myself? What internal dialogue do I need to have? What do I need to be doing with my spare time? How do I wake up? What am I doing in the morning? What conversations am I having? What am I creating? Because as a creator, clearly I am creating. This podcast was the start of that, as well as a photo shoot and other things where I've been able to bring through more of my artistic expression within my work. That is part of my new identity as a creator. And as I said, I'm starting a YouTube channel. I'm starting a Facebook community where I'll be sharing more value for people to access and actually give them value of, what's it taken to get to where I am now? Because that is a lot of what I'll be creating around this idea of conscious creatorship, of entrepreneurship, of actually building a business, because I do believe business is a way for us to bring our soul into this world and be able to bring through that to the collective. I could go rants on this, and I'm sure I will in the future, but if we look at the hero's journey, all it is getting a call to change, call to solve a problem, basically going on the journey to solve that problem and returning that gift to the collective. And this is the journey any coach, any creator actually does, is they solve their own problems and then bring that back and allow other people to receive that, sell that to them so they can also receive value and increase the process, and in that also heal the collective, because what that person is doing upon the hero's journey is healing that aspect of themselves that was hurt. And when they heal that, they also allow the healing of the collective. So this is why I believe business is the vehicle for soul, and why I am in the realm of business and why I'm doing this. And I'm also encouraging other people to do this as well, because it is important. It is the pathway to soul, and we're living in a unique age where this is completely possible. And again, a tangent, and they're necessary. This is the nuance to my worldview, because I'm not just telling people to go change their identity so they can create a business to make money. No, that is not what I'm here for. It's not my message. I'm telling people to start a business, to go out there and live true to their soul, because by doing that, by going on their own path of evolution, they have value to give back to the collective. They can help heal the collective, and in that, they will be able to provide for themselves and create the world and the lifestyle they want. And this is, for me, my own journey, because I don't claim to be at the end of my journey. I am still on that. And this is something I want to be very clear with. My new identity shift, because people might be looking at me and think I have it all figured out because I'm speaking like this and I've got a podcast and I have all these ideas and I know where I'm going and I know what I'm doing next. And yes, I do know all them things and I do have my plans in place and I am taking my action. And I still have a journey to go. And my current business goals is to grow my business to 6 figures. It's to expand this and provide more value, because I believe value is a precursor to income and financial incentive. And the more value I provide, by naturally it will increase my income. And I want to see other people doing the same, because that is a big part of what I'm about. So for me, that is part of the identity shift, to be like, oh, I want to grow my business. I want to expand it. Yes, financially. That is a part of my identity upgrade. And that is what I'm calling an identity shift, because I'm like, who do I want to be as a creator? I want to increase the time I have for myself. I want to increase the income and financial incentives I gain from the work I do. I want to make more impact with less time. I want to have more reach and influence more people, because I believe in my message and how I can share it to the world. So these are all aspects that I've considered within this new identity. And this is how you do it. I'm sharing my own journey so you have a template for your own. Because if you are currently in a stage of your life where you are considering what else is there for you, have a look at your identity. If you're not sure who you are or what your identity is, the world around you is reflecting it. The results you currently have is your identity, because they are just a direct translation of what's happening within yourself. So if you're like, oh, I don't have an identity, I'm too spiritual for that. No, you have an identity, and the world around you is actually reflecting exactly who you are right now. So don't bypass this. And it may sound like I've got a little bit of passion there, and I do, because I've been that. I'm like, I don't have any identity. I'm too spiritual for that, but that was my identity, that I didn't have an identity. And that is the paradox. You cannot escape this on the material reality that we live upon. And this is part of the 3D reality that we are here to experience. So firstly, figure out what is your current identity and what that means to you, and any areas that you're currently not liking your identity within. If it's you're not liking what you're doing, how is that part of your identity? If you're not happy in your relationship, how is that part of your identity? If you're not happy with your financial situation, how is that part of your identity? And then have a look at this and ask yourself, who do you want to be? What is the version of you that is actually embodying that which you want? Because this is a new identity that you want to step into. What are you feeling pulled towards? Okay, if you're not exactly sure what that version of you is doing, take some time and figure it out. What do you feel passionate about? And you can speak to your identity in these terms. It doesn't like, I need to be a creator, I need to be a coach. It could be, I'm passionate, I'm alive, I'm following my desires, I'm building something. That is an identity as well. Mine is just a little bit clearer right now because I know where I'm going, and that is very supportive, but it's not necessary. And so consider who you want to be in this world and allow yourself to be this person, and ask yourself, what would they do? How would they walk through this world? What is their message? What are they sharing? What are they doing? How are they spending their free time? That is important, because hey, if you're looking to change who you are, how you spend your free time is a big part of that. Maybe you're someone in a 9-to-5 and you want to build a business. That means that outside of your 9-to-5, you will have to start doing work and building your business. I at some point will create more videos on that. If you want to stay connected with that, check out Conscious Creators. That will be in my link tree. And this is how you go on the path to shift your identity. And this is why it's so important to actually go into this journey. And this one has been a little bit of a rant on this and a little bit of a deeper dive of what I'm bringing through next, because there is so much value each of us can give to this world. And when we get stuck in a smaller identity or a role or a position that we're like, I'm not sure if this is for me, I'm not sure if I'm the version of me that I want to be, well, allow yourself to change, because this is the biggest lesson I've learned. And even if you're like, I don't know where to begin, because this can happen and I've been there, I've done that, I'm not sure where I want to begin, or I'm like, there's so many choices. You can change your mind. This is something I've done. Like even right now, as I'm stepping into a creator, there's that part of me that's like, oh, did I waste time being a coach? Could I have just been a creator straight away? Truthfully, no. That was not my path. I needed to go on that journey, because in becoming a coach, I learned many of the skills that I'll need in becoming a creator, and my ego wouldn't have been able to adapt to that bigger change straight away. And for me, it was a bigger change. For other people, being a coach may be the bigger change. That depends on your identity, the content you're consuming, who you're following, what you're looking to. But that's just been my natural progression along that journey. So really consider this for yourself. Is there a path you feel you're being pulled along? Because this can be big. Because for me, this has been a natural progression. I started my spiritual journey and I didn't know where it was going to end up. I never started out because I wanted to help others. That wasn't the reason I started this journey. And so I followed my own thread. I followed my own aliveness. And at the start, it was all about me. I was like, I need to figure out my own shit. I need to heal. I need to create safety within myself. I need to know what love is. I need to be able to express myself. And this was big for me. And it took me a while before I got to that point where I started coaching people. And even then I was still very deeply on my healing path, and I still believe I am. There's a lot more layers for me to unpeel, and I will always be on that path. Yet I started it for me. And this is one of the last iterations I want to speak to, is my path has always been for myself. I'm walking the one I currently am because it excites me. I love speaking like this here now. I love having this conversation. And the more I feel alive by this work and this world, the more powerful I find what I deliver to people are. So when I've tried to be someone I'm not, I find a lot of problems. I struggle a lot more. I find less joy. And I believe that's because I've become unaligned from my path. And so if you're like, oh, I want to be this identity because it's got all the money and all the girls or the men, and I get to dress real nice, and I think that's what I should want. Stop. That's not why you do this. You can, but in the end you will be miserable and unhappy, because your soul will be calling to you asking, hey, there was actually a thread here for you, an aliveness, a desire that you truly wanted, and you didn't go for it. And this identity shift will happen naturally as you follow your own path. This is just a more conscious way to do it during the bigger transitions, and something I love to work with because I am in the world of magic. I am hosting a container called Men of Magic, which have men going through transformation and transitions into a new identity. That is the reason for any container. It's an alchemical process. And it needs to incorporate soul. It needs to incorporate your own aliveness, because, yeah, it's nice to have the money, everything you want, but that's if it comes at the expense of your soul. And this is what so many people have had occur. And that's why, you see the businessman, he's made all the money and he's still not happy, is because he's neglected his own soul. And we need to come back to a point where we can have both, because I believe in this age it's possible. And how we do that is follow our own desires, our own passions, and be able to serve that back. So my passions along this path, it was healing. I loved breath work. I loved embodiment. I loved Jungian psychology. I loved archetype. I loved a lot of dream work like James Hillman and like nature-based philosophy. I loved these. I loved like going into consciousness and having these conversations with people and reading and consuming these books that allowed me to expand my own consciousness. I didn't do that so I could have this conversation right now. I did that for my own eagerness to learn, my own longing to learn, and my own desire to learn. And so that's why I did it. No other reason. And this is the place we want to act from at all times. And so if you're looking to shift who you are, make sure you shift in alignment to yourself and allow yourself to follow your own passions. Because if you step into the wrong version of yourself without doing this intentionally, it will cause more suffering than actually staying where you are. And this will redirect you, and change can be powerful because it means you're willing to take action. So action I do find better than no action. If you're like, he said this and now I don't know if I should act or not, act. And then see how it feels. See if you're liking this version of yourself. And if not, allow yourself to change again and again and again until you find that thread that feels most alive for you. Because right now I couldn't tell you what's on the other side of creator. I've got ideas but it's all under the umbrella of becoming a creator. And I doubt that is my final identity that I choose to embody. And so continue to follow the thread, follow the aliveness, see where it leads you. Know that you get to shift and that you get to follow your soul. You get to follow your own unique thread, and this will allow you to step into new identities. And by stepping into new identities, it will allow you to release the suffering and the pain of not being who you were. And this is a big point, that we do this to release that old way of being so we can own and embrace what life gives us, the new experiences, the new way of being. So find your own weird way. Find what is calling to you as the next iteration of your own identity. Because maybe it is just you. And you got to start with loving who you are and loving all of yourself. If you're trying to do this to change who you are because you don't like yourself, it won't work. Slow down. Let yourself have some love. Let yourself love who you are and be like, cool. Yeah, I love who I am. And I desire more for myself. I desire to experience something more because I want to act from this place. And when you get to there, then you can choose this process. Thank you for listening to The Wyrd Way. Share, comment, let me know what you thought. Let me know what identity you're leaving behind and what identity you're stepping into. The show notes will be in, the links will be in the show notes below. I'll be tagging Conscious Creators, the Facebook community, and all the other things I mentioned. If you have questions, message me. If you're looking for deeper support, message me. I've currently got a couple spots open for my one-on-one mentoring. Thank you all for listening. This was The Wyrd Way. Dean Bentley, logging off. So much love.